Testing, testing.
It's just a delay as well.
Testing. Okay, councillors, we're back. Are we live at the moment, James? Are we? Well, that's okay. I think we'll be fine. So when we're all ready, we'll get going. Apologies for the delay. There was a technical error. The live stream is back up and running now. Well done, officers. So the next item is item 9, Midsummer Common Sculpture Trail. The officer is Phoebe Carter. Speakers are Gabriel, Jector, and the applicant is Henry or Jenny, the agent. So why don't we just get up on my screen as well. So Phoebe is the officer. So Phoebe, are you ready to present the item? Are we all here? I think we're all here, aren't we? Oh, no, yeah, yes. Yes, so Councillor Collis is sitting out this one because she was the executive councillor responsible. Hello, Phoebe. Hi, good afternoon. So if you'd like to present the item when you're ready, then please.
No, thanks. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks. Great.
Wonderful. So the application is seeking planning permission for the installation of 11 sculptures and 5 benches and associated structures forming a sculpture trail of a scale model of the solar system for a temporary period from the 25th of July until the 4th of September 2022, which includes the installation and removal. And this runs from Midsummer Common through to Cow Hollow Wood in Waterbeach. It's a cross-boundary application which is linked to application 22-02402 FUL, which has been submitted to South Cambridge District Council. This is the site location plan. There will be clearer images going forward, but this is Midsummer Common on this side, and this is Stourbridge Common in the middle, and then following the towpath here up until Waterbeach at the far end.
Do you use the laser pointer at all?
Yeah, just bring it up. Just realised. Thank you. So this is Cow's Hollow Wood at this end of the towpath. So as I said, it's a linked application. So out of the 11 sculptures, 8 sculptures and 5 benches fall within the Cambridge City Council boundary. An additional 3 sculptures and 3 benches will be positioned in South Cambridgeshire along the towpath and Cow Hollows Wood and Waterbeach. This application is part of a sculpture organisation called Our Place in Space, which is part of Festival UK 2022, which creates a public art event which is centred around a scale model of the solar system, combining 3-dimensional sculpture trail, interactive AR apps, learning events and programmes. It's a visitor attraction and immersive learning experience. The installation will be temporary and removable. The sculpture trail will be in place for 28 days with an additional 7 days for the installation and removal. The trail starts on Midsummer Common with locations here. So this is Victoria Avenue and Maids Causeway along here. So on the western side of Midsummer Common is the Shadow Earth, which is the first sculpture here, which is a translucent, a painted fiberglass sphere, which stands at 2.8 metres in height and 2.4 metres in width. Opposite the Shadow Earth is the sculpture of the Sun, which is positioned here on Midsummer Common, which is slightly taller at 3.2 metres. Both of them have internal steel structures with ground anchors and concrete ballasts, so they can't be toppled or removed. The third sculpture, and there are 4 additional sculptures along here, including Mercury, Venus, Earth, the Moon and Mars. So these archways are 3.5 metres in height and 3.5 metres in width, and have an internal width measurement in here of 1.6 metres, which allows for cyclists and wheelchairs to pass through. The height of the sculptures is 2.1 metres in height, and I'll just show you going through the positions of these sculptures. So there's Venus, which is positioned in here, and then you've got Earth and the Moon, which is a double archway, and then you have Mars. There are also benches positioned on Midsummer Common. The next sculpture, Sculpture 7, is Jupiter, which is positioned on Stourbridge Common, just in this location, close to the Riverside entrance. And the bench will also be positioned on Stourbridge Common. Sculpture 8 is on the Rivercam Towpath. It's positioned just beyond the new Trism Trail Bridge that's opened. This has a passing of 2 metres onto the side of it, which allows for bicycles to pass and pedestrians to pass both underneath and adjacent to the sculpture. Their benches are in 5 locations within Cambridge. There are 3 on Midsummer Common, 1 on Stourbridge Common, and 1 on the Rivercam Towpath. The benches are 2.1 metres in length, and they position you on the towpath as part of the sculpture trail and provide information as to the next locations of the sculptures. Given the sculptures and archways and benches all are anchored and have concrete ballast to ensure they can't be toppled or removed. Given the temporary nature of the proposal and the scale and appearance, it's not likely to cause harm to the character or appearance of the commons and towpath. The sculpture trail would fall within permitted development category, with the exception of the time period. Whilst the sculptures would only be in place for 28 days, which would fall within permitted development, an additional 7 days is required for both the installation and removal, which takes it over the permitted development rights. The proposed sculptures have been designed with an internal width of 1.6 metres, as I said, to ensure that there's sufficient space for cyclists. I think the noting of the amendment is we've amended the wording of condition 7, which just strengthens the requirement of timescale for the groundworks to be completed. An ecology survey and tree survey were submitted with the application, and both of the consultees came back saying as long as they complied with the proposal, then they were satisfied, and those have been included within the conditions. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Phoebe. Do we have Gabriel online? Okay, I think that's a statement then, probably, if you're not there, then Gabriel. Yep, so do you mind doing that then, please, Sarah? Thank you. So Gabriel is an objector representing Milton Cycling Campaign.
Milton Cycling Campaign is an organisation based in Milton with over 130 members, which campaigns for better cycling facilities in the Milton and surrounding areas. As an organisation, do not have a view on the sculpture trail as an art installation. Our concern is only with the location within the highway of structures 10 and 8. This route is part of the National Cycling Network, Route 11, and a major cycling transport corridor between Cambridge and Waterbeach. We believe that the location of these 2 structures pose a hazard to the legal users of this path. The structure 10 for the planet Neptune is located within a very narrow towpath, in itself less than 2 metres wide at most points. This structure narrows the path further to 1.6 metres, with the structure columns causing a further narrowing of the path. The structure is also only illuminated if approached from the Cambridge end, and there is no illumination if approached from the Waterbeach side. Conflict was seen firsthand during the weekend when a cyclist tried to go past some people taking pictures near the path, and as they walked backwards, the cyclist almost collided with the pedestrians. The other problematic structure is structure 8 for Saturn, the one located near the entrance to the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, part of the Chisholm Trail. This structure has been placed in the natural swept path of cycles, and during my visit on Saturday, I observed at least 2 potential collisions between 2 cyclists and people admiring the structure. We note that structure 9 has thankfully not been installed where it was originally proposed in the plans because it caused an obstruction to operate the lock safely. It is therefore very unfortunate that these structures have been installed at these 2 locations. This path is perceived by many residents as the only safe cycle path between Milton and Waterbeach to Cambridge, and the locations of these structures will cause conflict between the users of the path. We suggest moving the structure 8 to the other side of the bridge in Ditton Meadows, outside of the path, just like other structures within the trail, where it can be observed and admired without causing an obstruction to the highway. For structure 10, ideally the structure should be installed outside of the main path, but we do recognise, that there might not be enough space alongside the river. Instead, we suggest installing reflective material on the back of the structure and perhaps some temporary signs asking cyclists to slow down. These signs are similar to the ones asking visitors not to climb on the structures. These small changes should at least mitigate slowly the narrowing issues these structures create. Thank you for your time.
So do we have Henry Sykes or Jenny Page?
Yes, Jenny Page here.
Oh, well, hello, Jenny. Hi, afternoon. So do you
Hello.
want to speak then, please? You've got 3 minutes to speak when you're ready.
Please. Thank you. My name's Jenny Page from Turley. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants. The Our Place in Space Sculpture Trail is one of 10 temporary public art projects across the country to celebrate science and creativity. We've already had great success in Derry and Belfast before coming to Cambridge. As your officer has explained, the event runs for 28 days and wouldn't normally need planning permission, but we do need a couple of days each side to build the structures and take them down again. You probably know it's already in place, as been mentioned, and appreciate that this isn't ideal, but we have been working closely with your officers to try to secure the necessary permissions in time. We've gone to quite some lengths to make sure that any possible disruption during those 28 days is minimised, and we've worked with CAM conservators and your officers across the council to satisfy any concerns. You'll have heard the objections from Milton Cycling Campaign, and I have to say that the movements through and around those structures have been something that we've looked at really carefully, particularly along the river. There are going to be busy times when the cyclists and pedestrians are clustered around the sculptures. But quite frankly, this is actually what we want to happen. We want people to stop and stare and think. To be in scale, these structures have to be positioned at particular places along the route. But those arches are, as been said previously, they're wide enough to walk and cycle through. They're large and brightly coloured and are actually designed to attract attention, and I don't think you can really miss them. Anyone who walks or cycles along that towpath knows it can be busy, and I have to say, on the whole, people behave responsibly and they think about others, and we don't see this as a problem. Also, we have trail guardians along the route to look after the sculptures and manage visitors. I would just add that the Cambridge Cycling Campaign haven't objected to it. So I hope the project speaks for itself. We want local residents and visitors to come to Cambridge and see for themselves, particularly families, and to come cycling and walking and to have what I think will be a thought-provoking and a fun day out. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, you can, welcome to carry on listening in if you want, but you might want to turn your camera off now. Thank you. Okay. Debate. Yeah, Councillor Bennett.
It's really more just a question, Chair. What happens to the structures once they leave Cambridge? Do they get reused or do they just end up in landfill? Or both?
Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions? Yes, Councillor Bora.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it'd be good to have a response from officers about whether there could be signage added just to remind cyclists to slow down. That seems sensible. And could I just check that condition 6, which relates to the lighting, because I see that paragraph 8.30 suggests that the lighting needs to be dimmed compared to what was originally proposed. So can I just make sure that condition 6 is referring to the dimmed level, not the original level? Thank you very much. I should note I'm ward councillor for this area, and as such was approached, obviously, in principle for use of the land, but I'm unfettered in my discretion in this one.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
To ask about I'm trying to think how wide 1.6 metres is, that the Milton Cycling Campaign have said that they think that's too narrow. Seems wide enough to me, but perhaps that somebody knows whether a cargo bike or a bike with a trailer could get through that, you know, if you've got children. The other, and I don't suppose they'd be going terribly fast, actually. I actually would prefer not to have lots and lots of extraneous signage to say slow down. I'd like the sculptures to sort of stand out, speak for themselves. I'm really pleased that you've got trail guardians. I wonder whether they're there all the time or just some of the time. But otherwise, I'm very much in favour of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Thornborough.
Yeah, I saw them on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, and I was amazed how many families were actually going from the sun, going out to the Chisholm Trail Bridge and beyond. And I'm really hoping that families from the north of Cambridge may come down and walk in along the same route. So I hope it's going to be a two-way thing rather than just one. And I think I agree with Councillor Gorthropwood. These are quite large things, and as long as you've got your head up looking as you're cycling along, I think they're pretty obvious. And I would agree that here they're for a short period, and not to add more things in that area would be preferable.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Bennett.
Just a quick query on behalf of Councillor Copley, because some of the installations in Abbey Ward, and her question was, should not all the ward councillors involved have been consulted first? It's not that we have a problem with the installation, but we could have helped publicise it within Abbey and ensure that all residents get to use it.
Okay. Yeah, so any more questions? Just say it seems a bit odd if they're put on the actual cycleway. It looks like Saturn is on the actual cycleway as far as I can see. Is that the case, Phoebe? And, you know, like you wouldn't put sculptures in the middle of the road, would you? So, yeah, you come back to with answers then, please, Phoebe.
Of course. So in regards to what's happening to the structures next, they are returning, I believe, to Northern Ireland for another installation, and I think they're also going to the North Down coastal path. So they are. It's an ongoing installation across the UK. So after those two next installations, I'm not sure what's happening with the sculptures. In regards to the ward councillors being consulted, I'm not entirely sure of the consultation that happened prior to the planning consultation with the ward councillors. However, this will have gone out on our weekly list, which would have, and we put up 25 site notices, and it went into the press. So I'm not sure about the prior consultation, but before that we have quite widely publicised it. In regards to the positioning on the cycle on the towpath, it does sit on the towpath. So Sculpture 8 falls within the City Council ward, where as cycling, the Milton Cycling Campaign was stating, Neptune falls within South Cambs District Council. The path is at that point about 4.5 metres in width, and so the sculpture will have approximately 3 metres on one side for cyclists to go round it on Sculpture 8, and 1.6 metres is sufficient for a cargo bike or to go through it, as well as wheelchairs. So there are options. Further down the towpath it does become narrower, but the towpath is also narrower at that point. In regards to the lighting question, we can double check and reword the condition to ensure that it's to the email specification set out instead of the ecology report.
Thank you very much,
I think
Phoebe.
that was all the questions.
Yeah, any more? Yes, Councillor Bennett.
I'm sorry to be difficult, but Hannah and I go through the planning report every week, and it's certainly not under Abbey. Is this an issue that people are only putting the applications under one ward? Are we expected to go and look at every single application to see if our ward is also affected?
What we're discussing is not really a matter for this item, but I appreciate your interest in it. So, Councillor Pora, you said you were consulted. Were you consulted, or did you just find out about it?
It may be when I was open spaces spokes as well, but normally because my ward has a lot of open spaces, we just tend to be notified, when an event is happening and say, do ward councillors have any objections? In this case, my only concern was that the cows wouldn't eat them. And I was assured the cows were being removed so that they couldn't. So I don't know whether it went to other, but it would have been through streets and open spaces, as in the city council asking their ward council. So it's not a planning matter, is my understanding. Though, as Naomi said, Councillor Bennett said, I don't remember seeing it on the planning list myself for Market. So I don't know which ward it came in under. I don't know.
I think this is something to take up outside of the meeting, probably, Councillor Bennett. But I appreciate your point. And I think that putting Saturn, number 8, in the middle of the towpath is not good. I don't think that saying there's enough meterage around it to cycle past is good enough, because if people are standing there, it means there isn't the space to cycle round. So I think that's a bad plan. And if it's there on the basis that it's a certain number of meters away from another one to mimic this actual distance between the actual planets, that seems of little consequence, because nobody's going to actually measure it with a tape measure. So I think the placing is the more important thing, and it should have accommodated people to walk, cycle, whatever on the towpath, and it hasn't been done. Other than that, very good. Any other comments? Nope. Okay. I think we'll go to the vote then, Phoebe, probably. So recommendation, please, Toby.
Thanks, Chair. So the recommendation is set out on page 208 of the agenda pack, and that is to approve subject to conditions as set out, with minor amendments to those delegated to officers, and the amendment of condition 7 as set out on the amendment sheet.
Thanks, Toby. Recommendation to approve. All those in favour of that recommendation?
Unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the item is approved. Thank you to Phoebe and Speaker. Thank you. Okay, so next item is number 10, Green End Road. So that's Mike Hammond. Hello, Mike, again. We've got Alistair May, objector. Has he sent a statement in, has he? So,
He has. I didn't know there was any address.
maybe we'll come to that in a minute. I'll check. So, if we're all ready to carry on. Oh, yes. Welcome back, Councillor Collis. Next item, item 10. So, Mike, you can present them, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see my screen okay? I'll just try and put it in full mode.
You can see it. Yeah, thank you. Might you want to go full screen or whatever on it, make it bigger?
Is it showing now, or is it in that weird little mode at the moment?
Weird at the moment, yeah.
Oh, okay. Try. Sorry.
I think, Mike, if you do F5, it does full screen or slideshow.
Let's have a look. Sorry about this. No, that's what I just pressed. Not to worry, I will find a way. Just share another screen. Is it showing full screen, or has it gone back to that strange?
Full screen, well done. Thanks, Mike. That's
Oh, okay, good. Right, yep, so the application is for the erection of a 2-bed bungalow on land to the rear of 157 Green End Road. So the location of the site is in here. I've got a site location plan next, just to give you an idea about the surrounding context.
Is the laser pointer at all? Is it possible?
Oh, yep, I can do that. That's better. Yep. So the actual site itself is this rectangular square of land on land to the back of Green End Road, also adjoining evergreens. So these are existing and proposed site plans. So worth pointing out, this tree in the northwest corner of the site is a TPO tree. Other than that, there's no sort of relevant site constraints. So the proposal is to place a single-story dwelling in here, with the existing garden of 157 where it's got a fence staying as it is. So just to show you that in more detail, so it'll be set back from the road. Bins and bikes are positioned on the south side here. There's space for 2 car parking spaces, and then its sort of side/rear garden will be to the north here. So these are proposed elevations, so mainly in brick, but also some cladding on the front or the east elevation with a slate tiled roof. This is the ground floor plan in more detail. So the kitchen dining area is on the north side, and then both bedrooms are on the south side. This is the roof plan, show you Velux windows in this roof plane, but other than that, not much to note. So you may have noticed in the report there was a previous refusal on this site. I have got the full reasons here, but essentially it was refused on 3 reasons, and this was for a 1.5-story dwelling with a detached garage, so it's slightly different. It was refused on grounds of design, in terms of its sort of scale and bulk being out of character with the area. It was also refused on the lack of sufficient amenity for future occupiers in terms of being overlooked and having poor outlooks for some of the rooms. And it was also refused on the grounds of insufficient information, essentially, regarding the TPO tree and what impact it might have. So I'll just run through how this scheme sort of addressed those. So on the left-hand side here is our visualizations of the previously submitted scheme. On the right-hand side, if I minimize that, are the proposal, showing similar visualization. So you can see it's come down from 1.5-story to single story. Rather than being flush up against this highway verge, it's also been set back and sort of small hedge posed here. The garage, which you can see here, has gone now, so that's no longer part of it. So yeah, so just quoting from the officer report, we're of the opinion that that's overcome that reason for refusal in terms of the reduction in scale and the mass on there. So comparing the site plans in terms of the second reason for refusal, so it's got more garden space now, the proposed dwelling, than compared to the previously refused one. Part of the reason for refusal was that issue about being flush up against the highway, essentially, and that's now being set back here, as you can see. And then another reason for refusal as part of that, shall I say, was about a poor outlook for a bedroom, which was approximately here, looking out in this direction, so it looks straight out onto that garage, but that's now facing out that way, so it's got more of an open outlook. Yep. And then the final reason for refusal, this is orientated, so north is where my red cursor was going up and down now. So yeah, the final reason for refusal was a lack of information regarding impact on trees, and they've now provided an arboricultural impact assessment, which is essentially this document here, which I've sort of consolidated. And the tree officer has raised no objection to that, subject to conditions to principally protect that walnut tree. Most of the actual development itself is outside the root protection area. There's a small area of paving here, so there'd be some sort of to ensure it doesn't, the foundations don't affect that, but that can be dealt with via the condition. So to show you the pictures, tree in question is this one here. On the right hand side, probably get a better view here. And then this is looking back towards the sort of host dwelling, if you would, number 157. So in summary, it's considered that the proposed development overcomes the three proofs reasons for refusal, and approval is recommended subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so re the speaker, Alistair May. I understand. Are you Alistair May? No, you're not. No. You're, sorry, Neil. I didn't quite see you over there. So Alistair May is wanting to present something. We need to confirm it's in the public domain. Is that so, right, Sarah?
My understanding, Chair, is that the picture that the objector has supplied isn't in the public domain.
Right, we won't be looking at that then. So, and he sent a statement, so you're going to read that, Sarah? Okay, if you want to do that then, please. Thank you very much.
Dear Committee, we urge the committee to refuse this application. The living area of the proposed dwelling has 6 full-height glass patio doors. These directly face the living area and bedrooms of 9 evergreens at distance of only 15.4 metres. They are also close to 11 evergreens. Cambridge City appears to have no supplementary planning guidance that specifies the minimum separation between the windows of habitable rooms. We therefore look at the limits from other councils. South Cambridgeshire District Councils specify 25 metres. Many other councils, including High Density Southwark, specified 21 metres. Properties in the locality have separations of around 27 to 100 metres. The proposed separation of 15.4 metres is well below established limits. It will therefore not give adequate privacy and amenity. We respectfully dispute the officer's statement that the walnut tree will provide privacy. It's only in leaf for 6 months a year and it has a limited lifespan. Even when in leaf, there is a clear view under its canopy. 9 evergreens will see directly into the living room and kitchen of the proposed dwelling and have a view of its entire back garden. He's then referred to a photograph. 11 evergreens will also have a view. Likewise, there is a direct view from the proposed living room into the bedrooms of 9 evergreens and to some degree 11 evergreens. We expect issues with television noise, etc., reaching the facing bedrooms of 9 and 11 evergreens via the proposed patio doors. There is a line of sight path for sound, which is much more troublesome than the obscure path from a dwelling next door. In these respects, the proposal goes against Local Plan Policy 52C, which states proposals for development on sites that form part of a garden or group of gardens or that subdivide an existing residential plot will only be permitted where C, the amenity and privacy of neighbouring, existing and new properties must be protected. The previous application was refused partly under these terms. We feel the mere 2.9 shift of dwelling in the present application does not significantly improve privacy. We remain concerned that the site plan, but not the AIA tree plan, shows the dwelling within the 10.2 root protection zone of the walnut tree. Finally, we'd like to raise a technical point. The applicant has submitted Certificate A declaring sole ownership of the land. However, the boundary of the site exceeds the applicant's land registry title. It uses part of the publicly maintained grass verge as a garden. The fence was physically moved prior to the application. The 1990 Town and Country Planning Act states an application is not valid unless the relevant certificate has been completed. Are the committee satisfied that the Certificate A is correct? These are our opinions on the matter. We urge the committee to review the 2020 and 2022 objection letters from 9 Evergreens. That's it, Chair.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for reading that out. Thanks for the statement, Alistair. I understand you're listening online. In that case, we'll go to debate. Any questions? Councillor Thornborough.
I notice on the plan that there are 3 existing electricity meter boxes just next to the proposed driveway, and the highways have recommended condition 7, which is the 2 by 2 metre visibility displays to protect pedestrians coming by, and they are meant to be maintained free from obstruction from a height of 0.6 metres. So basically, when you're sitting in the car waiting to come out, you need to be able to see both ways. But I think the electricity meter block boxes, which are existing features on the highway, will make that an impossible condition to be met unless those meter boxes are moved. I'm so a bit concerned about that. And the other concern is about the bike storage being not near the front door. I know there's a condition for the bike stores, and I wondered if the actual location of that could be reconsidered so that it was actually closer to the front door under that condition. Thanks.
That's Councillor Thornborough. Councillor Walford.
Okay, the points I wrote down was, turning space, I think that's in the house, in the dwelling, and M4 too, I just got a question mark there. So it's whether or not you can manoeuvre a wheelchair around and with the bathrooms, etc. I'd like to encourage the use of solar on the southeast facing roof. I was a bit concerned about the overlooking and hearing the comments from one of the objectors by the houses in Evergreens, 2 houses mentioned. And I wondered whether it was worth conditioning a hedge and a fence. Maybe there is a fence there already, but to condition that. And I did wonder about the lay-by, whether or not people could end up getting boxed in because of that existing lay-by that's there. How's it used at the moment? And my understanding, I think reading it, was that the electricity cable boxes were going to be moved. So if that could be confirmed or not. Thank you, by the officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Borrow.
Thank you, Chair. Echo Councillor Gawthorpe's point about whether there's a fence at the end, which would seem an obvious solution. It's good to see a house that actually exceeds the space standards rather than being 0, which is welcome. I am a little bit concerned about the lack of the biodiversity net gain information. I know we're requiring it by condition, but from the Google view we saw, there seemed to be a lot of trees on that site. So I'd be grateful if the officer could just offer some reassurance that we are definitely going to see a biodiversity net gain, because there are clearly some other quite decent specimens there, as well as the walnut tree. Could the officer also just talk about the 2 gardens? I think the newer one is large enough. The older one does seem fairly small, but I noticed that wasn't a reason for refusal in the last one, so I suspect that won't be an issue. And finally, the certificate of ownership and the footpath issue. I'm guessing we'll be told those are civil matters, but I'd just be grateful for a comment because that was raised by the objector, and obviously it would be of concern if a fence has been moved and we're about to agree planning for something that might then obviously not be in the state we think it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So exceeding space standards, I'll leave it to the officer to confirm, but it is debatable, I think, because it's 2 bedrooms and then one is called an office, which could be a bedroom. And if it was 3 bedrooms, 3 double bedrooms, it should be 95 square metres, it's actually 85, but if you're single bedrooms, then it could be something else. So it sort of do exceed it, but if you know what I mean. Anyway, we'll leave that for now. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a very short point about page 222 and point 8. I think there's a typo and there's a not where there shouldn't be. That's page 222 and point 8.
I haven't got 222 because I'm on my computer screen. Is there an item number or something there?
Condition 8.
Condition 8.
I think there's an extra not in there.
Okay, I'll leave that to the officer. Anything else? Councillor Agents.
Yeah, the site is pretty full. I think that we should have a no permitted development condition.
Sorry, a what?
No permitted development condition.
More? Okay, right, back to you then, officer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and go through as many as I can. So in terms of the suggestion about the cycle store possibly being located nearer to the front, I think that can be dealt with via the condition, but perhaps we could add an informative on to direct the applicant to that, so they're aware in the event of permission being granted. Similarly, in terms of the suggestion for solar panels to be on the south, and I think it was the east-facing roofs, again, there is a condition regarding carbon emissions. I believe I haven't got it immediately in front of me, but we could also perhaps add an informative that that's perhaps a good way of doing it. So I'd be happy for that. In terms of the point about the boundary treatment between the proposed dwelling and the neighbours to the north, I think a boundary treatment condition would be absolutely fine. I'm just scrolling through to see if we already have a landscaping or similar condition, but at first glance, I can't see one on here, so I'd be happy for that to be added if members were minded to include it. In terms of the M42 standards, there is a condition number 23 that requires it to be built to those standards. And it also did say in the applicant's design statement that they are intending to do that. So I think that will be secured. There was a question about the comparison of the garden spaces. Yeah, the proposed one is slightly bigger than what was previously refused. And I think as was referred to, it wasn't mentioned as a part of the reason for refusal previously. Notwithstanding that, I think it's over 100 square meters, I believe it is, the actual garden space available on the site. So I think either way, officers are minded that's sufficient to provide an acceptable living environment. The point about the certificate A being filled out incorrectly and the land ownership, as was alluded to, I think that is more of a sort of civil matter. We have to, take what's sort of submitted to us in front of us, and the applicant's done that correctly. If they've not, then they'd have to then reapply at some point down the line if they filled out incorrectly. So we have to sort of take that on their faith to an extent. In terms of Councillor Bajent's request for this, I think there's no PD condition. There are two conditions proposed, number 21 and number 22, which would limit, number 22 would limit extensions under Class A and other alterations under Class A, which is typically extensions. And Class E would prevent sort of outbuildings being built against neighbours' boundaries and things like that. So I think the two conditions that are there would probably suffice for that. There was a question referring to, I think it was something 8. I couldn't quite hear it, I'm afraid. Something 0.8. I get, like you, Councillor Smart, I didn't have the page number in front of me, so I wasn't 100% sure what that was referring to. So if that could be repeated after this, that'd be excellent. And finally,
sorry.
Condition 8, was it?
Michael, there's an unnecessary not in that condition.
Okay. Can you see that and confirm it, Toby? Is that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so we've removed that not. That can be done. The only points that I personally was unsure of, I don't know if Toby, the answer to this regarding the electricity cabinets. I wasn't sure. I couldn't see anything in the officer report. Excuse me, this isn't my case. I'm presenting on behalf of another officer, but I couldn't see anything about the cabinets being relocated. But I don't know if Toby, if you know anything about that at all.
Toby?
Through you, Chair, I don't know anything about that, but I think we'd have to, they'd either have to kind of arrange for them to be moved through their own expense, or come in with a slightly revised access point to show 2x2 pedestrian visibility displays, but it's not an insurmountable problem. Applicants often face these issues and they can overcome them.
Thanks, Toby. Were you finished, Mike?
There was one point. Sorry, I'm hearing myself double there. There was one point about the lay-by and its use, I believe. I'm just trying to have a look quickly at that situation. So it might be helpful if I share my screen, perhaps, Chair, just to show what that situation's like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bear with me. Hopefully this is easier than another time. All right. So as you can see, it is used at present. I don't know if that's catching up. Oh, sorry, it's gone. Oh, sorry, it's gone miles away now. Where's it gone? Just trying to get in front of it. Oh, and it goes to there, that's why. So there is what looks like an existing dropped curb in here already. I can't see, it's a single yellow line. Was it a single yellow line? It might just be part of the paving, but I imagine if someone's blocking their drive, that would almost become a sort of civil matter in terms of them being able to retain access. It's not something the Highway Authority have requested be conditioned or anything like that, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Councillor Thornborough.
I was involved in applying for something, a similar kind of access. You have to apply to the highways for sort of a license to have a formal access, and I think that would be marked on so that there wouldn't be parking in the actual access that they get a license for. And may I, if there is going to be a boundary treatment, can we have the hedgehog doorways in there, please?
So did you get that, Mike?
Yep, I did get that. That's very helpful, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. And yeah, I've got no issue with the hedgehog part being included, whether part of the wording of the condition or as an informative. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
I suppose a variegated hedge might be nicer than a fence. In fact, if that was, if the applicant would like to do that, then you wouldn't need to cut a hole in the fence, would you? But they might prefer to put a fence, I suppose. Sorry, more hands up. So, Councillor Porer.
Just quickly, sorry, did the officer come back on the biodiversity net gain? And I just asked about the tree loss, whether we could see which trees were actually going and that you're satisfied that we can retain, well, have a biodiversity net gain despite the loss of the trees that are going.
Okay, Councillor Wood.
First of all, I thought they were shrubs, not trees. But the other thing, I just wanted to check about the boxes, because obviously if I've invented a comment that they were going to be moved, would you put a condition or an informative on that, or what? Was that not done under planning? Thank you.
Okay, back to you then, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's probably helpful if I share my screen on that tree removal plan. If you just bear with me a moment. Hopefully this is legible for you, but the proposal itself, in terms of tree removals, these aren't protected, these two trees at the back here. It's tree 5 and tree 6, which are a sycamore and a myrobalan plum. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. They're the only two proposed to be removed. The rest are staying or will be protected during construction. In terms of biodiversity, again, I think there is scope. I mean, for example, things like the hedgehog sort of highways and potentially, for example, on the bike store for a green roof or things like that. I think I feel there's opportunities to meet the sort of 10, 20% sort of target we're seeking. So yeah, on that, I feel okay. And in terms of the informative for the electrical boxes, I think that could easily be included if needed, just to make the applicant aware that they might need sort of separate consent for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do we need an informative on this access that you mentioned, Councillor Thornborough, in terms of access across the verge and the bay and the parking bay? Don't need that. Okay. Right. Okay. So if we get the recommendation then, please, Toby.
Thanks, Chair. So the recommendation is set out on page 221 of the agenda pack, and that is to approve subject to the planning conditions set out below. And in addition, a boundary treatment condition to include gaps for hedgehogs, an amendment to condition 8 to remove the word not, an informative with regard to condition 16 in relation to the relocation of the cycle store, an informative with regard to solar PV positioning on the roof, an informative with regard to pedestrian visibility displays, and the need for these to be achieved possibly with the relocation of telecoms infrastructure cabinets on the highway.
Thank you very much. That's the recommendation. All those in favour of approval?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. So that item is approved. Thank you. Thanks, Mike, and thanks to the speaker, Alistair, for sending in your statement. So, do members need to have a little break before we go plough on? I can see one thumb up at least. So in that case, we will. So just 5 minutes or so then. So back at 22 then, please. Thanks. Is that long enough, everyone? Make it a bit longer then. We'll come back at 1:45, so 9 minutes time. Thanks. Right, fine. Okie doke, so well done everyone, doing very well, good debate. Not too much more to do now. We can all go home. So like I said, we're going to do item 13 when we get started today. We're not live yet, I don't think. So Councillor Bajan, I believe you're not taking part in this item, is that right? So welcome back to the next session. We just had a short break. So we're going to do item 13 next, as we have speakers for that item, so just shift the order slightly. Item 11 was next, but I'm saying we're going to do item 13 before that. So I believe Councillor Bajan is going to leave the room for this one, not taking part in the debate. Okay, so Alice Young is the officer. It's land at 64 Cromwell Road. We've got the applicant, Richard, who is here, yep, and Neil Shaler, Councillor Neil Shaler, is going to speak from Romsey, and Councillor Dinah Pans has submitted a statement, and a statement from Councillor Healy as well. So let's have the presentation first, then, Alice, if you're ready, please. Hi Alice, afternoon.
Afternoon. Bear with me.
Can't hear you, Alice. Turn your microphone up or something.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, fab. Thank you. Sorry about that. Let me just get up the presentation, so bear with me a second. Can I confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. So this is an application for the erection of a new dwelling in replacement of an existing garage in the rear of 64 Cromwell Road, Cambridge. The application has been brought to planning committee as there has been a third party representation in support of the application, which is contrary to the officer recommendation of a refusal. Let me just get out my screen pointer as well, just for reference. So the application site is to the rear of 64 Cromwell Road, a two-storey semi-detached dwelling on the eastern corner of Cromwell Road, and currently comprises a garden land and a single-storey garage accessed via a shared road to the rear of Cromwell Road properties here, access between number 70 and 72 Cromwell Road. The application site has no constraints as it falls outside the conservation area and the controlled parking zone. The proposal seeks to demolish the existing garage along the eastern rear boundary, subdivide the residential garden and erect a one-bedroom dwelling in its place. The dwelling would be partially sunken, have a basement level with a living area at lower ground floor and a bedroom at ground floor. The main outside space would also be at ground floor level with a second lower garden area below. Pedestrian access to the dwelling would be from Cromwell Road, here, if you can see my pointer, and would be adjacent to the cycle store adjacent to Cromwell Road. Just to confirm, there's no access via the rear access. So this is the proposed ground floor plan. You'll see that there is a bedroom with bifold doors and an upper garden area and a shower room at ground floor. You'll access the property via the front passage and then obviously enter the walkway to the garden area and through the bedroom at ground floor. And then to get to the lower ground floor area, there is a walkway and steps down to the lower ground floor area. which leads to living area, kitchen dining area at lower ground floor. These are the proposed elevations. So this is the east elevation here, fronting the rear access of at Cromwell Road, and then the southern elevation, which is kind of a cross section as well because it shows the lower ground floor aspect. North elevation, and then the western elevation, which faces the rear of Cromwell Road, 64 Cromwell Road. So the proposed dwelling would be sited in a backland position, replacing this garage here, introducing a separate residential dwelling and use in the rear garden of a property fronting Cromwell Road. Cromwell Road is characterised by street-facing properties with only incidental and ancillary buildings located in the rear gardens. While the proposal would be subservient scale, sympathetic in design and have a modest footprint, officers consider that the dwelling would appear more domestic than surrounding outbuildings and the use would not be compatible in this backland location. The subdivision and movements to and from the dwelling in this backland location would change the nature and character of the site, as it would function and appear as a separate dwelling. This is contrary to the surrounding uses in the rear of Cromwell Road Gardens. All uses here are ancillary and incidental. Therefore, by introducing a separate residential dwelling into the rear gardens of into this rear garden environment, the proposal would change the nature of the rear gardens of Cromwell Road functionally and visually, encroaching upon the rear garden environment, and in turn the proposal would be out of character with this surrounding area. The proposal would therefore be contrary to policy 52 and 55 of the local plan. The agent has stated that the proposal would not be contrary to policy 52. Policy 52 states that proposals shall only be permitted where the form, height and layout of the proposed development is appropriate to the surrounding pattern of development and the character of the area. Officers consider that the proposal is not appropriate in terms of form and layout given the separate residential use in the rear garden environment. So the second reason for refusal is with regards to safe and inclusive access. Access to the proposed dwelling, as highlighted before, is via a long access in between 62 and 64 Cromwell Road. Given the length of the access, the proposal would not create a safe and inclusive access to the dwelling. Moreover, the principal access to the dwelling would be via a bedroom located at ground floor, and the lower ground floor level where the living area is located would not be accessible for guests who may be not as mobile. The dwelling itself may meet the requirements of Part M42 compliance, but overall the proposed dwelling would not be accessible or inclusive for everyone. The NPPF and local plan policy requires development to be convenient, safe, inclusive and accessible. The proposal, given the length of the access, the layout of the site and the dwelling, would therefore be in direct conflict with policy 50, 56, 57 of the local plan and paragraph 130 of the NPPF. It also would not align with secured by design principles. Taking into account policy, the views of consultees and wider stakeholders and other planning considerations, officers' recommendation is one of refusal for the following reasons. On the screen now, I'm happy to read those out for you as well. So the proposal, by virtue of its use, backland and backland location, would not be compatible with the surrounding area, which is characterised by ancillary and incidental buildings, not separate dwellings. By introducing a separate unit of accommodation in this backland position, the proposal would change the nature of the rear gardens of Cromwell Road, encroaching on the rear garden environment. By failing to respond to the surrounding context, the proposal would be contrary to policy 52 and 55 of the Cambridge Local Plan. Reason for refusal 2 currently is the proposed dwelling, by virtue of its main long and narrow access from Cornwall Road would not create a safe or inclusive access to the proposed dwelling, posing a safety risk for future occupiers by failing to provide a safe, inclusive or accessible place. The proposal would be contrary to Cambridge Local Plan Policies 55, 56, 57, secured by design principles, and the MPPF paragraph 130. Thank you.
So the speakers, the chapter first, I think.
Agent, because it's up for refusal.
Oh, yes, of course. So, yeah, silly me. So, Richard, you're first. Do you want to, wherever, you can, there's one there or one at the back, maybe, whichever you prefer, really. Not that one, no, sorry. I didn't quite mean anything. No, the back one is the best one? Yeah, okay, so go around the back then. Sorry, Richard, sorry to muck you around, that's my fault. Just the cameras are focused on that as well then, so we can all see you, etc. So you get 3 minutes to speak, Richard. It's the button on the right-hand side to press and the light comes on. And yeah, when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. The application before you seeks to deliver a high-quality, sustainable dwelling in the city. The application is about making the most of the precious land resource that we have in central Cambridge. It's about delivering housing that exceeds standards. It's about unique and interesting dwellings that increase choice in the local housing market. It's about innovative use of space to create market dwellings that are as affordable as possible. And therefore, as a council, it's about providing homes for people of all means and all requirements. Your officer report alleges that the access to the dwelling would not be safe or inclusive, but the opposite is true. National standards and assessment protocols have been developed to ensure safety and inclusivity in the design of new development. And the application scheme has been shown to comply with, and in most cases exceed them. The planning statement details this compliance point by point. Where such standards exist, there is no place for unevidenced subjective judgments, especially where they ignore compliance with the standards. Indeed, government guidance cautions against this. For the avoidance of doubt, Building Regs M42 does not require step-free access to the principal entrance, which would be the below-ground entrance. It simply requires step-free access to an alternative entrance point, which the scheme provides. M42 is about making dwellings accessible and adaptable for those with differing needs, including some older and disabled people. It is not about getting wheelchairs to every part of every dwelling. This would be overkill, and in any event would probably mean that very little housing ever got built. It is my professional view, contrary to what your officer report suggests, that the scheme is policy compliant. Clearly so in the case of Policy 52, which is your key policy as far as the principle of new dwellings on garden land is concerned. However, even if the scheme did not comply with the local plan, non-compliance alone does not require refusal. Your policies are there to prevent harm, and refusal should be based on harm. Your officer report alleges harm in relation to subdivision of a rear garden and the proposed use. But planning permission already exists for the subdivision, and the report confirms that the impacts of the use would be acceptable. In short, there wouldn't be any harm. There would, however, be a significant benefit: the delivery of a sustainable new home in a sustainable location. A home that your officer report confirms in several places would be of high quality. I've lived in Romsey for 11 years, and I'm passionate about our community. I believe this scheme will only enhance and strengthen it, helping to cement its position as one of the most equitable, welcoming, sustainable, and healthy places to live in the city. I respectfully request that you approve the application for this reason. And I would add, just as a point of clarification, the assessment in the planning statement against secured by design principles demonstrates that the application does in fact accord. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Richard. You can stay there if you want, or sit back down wherever. And got actually not you next, in fact, Councillor Shaler. It's Councillor Pounds next, isn't it? So if you want to read the statement, your county, she's city. So thank you.
I'm writing in support of the above proposed development in Romsey Ward of Cambridge City Council. I visited the site and discussed the proposed application for a dwelling in the garden of 64 Cromwell Road with the applicant. The new proposal seems acceptable to me in keeping with local plan regulations, and the applicant has addressed the concerns raised from his original application. The access path to the dwelling will be 1.2 metres wide and in full view of the flats, which 64 Cromwell consists of, as well as neighbouring property, and therefore safe and adequate. There is bin storage and off-road parking in the property's front garden. The new dwelling is separated from the main house by a reasonable length of garden, so there's no sense of over-intensification, and is very attractive architecturally in design and in keeping with the character of the road. It sits in line with a row of garages and outbuildings and is in no way incongruous, interfering to garden views or overpowering to neighbours. The new dwelling will provide an attractive, sustainable dwelling for the right occupant with plenty of light and ventilation in an area where there is a need of housing. That's the end of that statement.
Thank you very much. So next up is you now. So Councillor Shaler, who's, well, you say who you are, and
Thank you, Chair and committee. Good afternoon. Just to introduce myself, I'm Neil Shaler. I'm a local representative, the County Councillor for the area. I'm also Vice Chair of Highways and have an interest in streets, access, low carbon living and such. In addition, I have a personal interest in the proposal, being a neighbour and homeowner, just a few houses along from Richard's property. Now, Richard has already laid out the planning position. I have watched the building works done to date at 64 Cromwell Road with interest over the years, and I think they very much enhance our area, and I expect the current proposal to do the same. I would like to mention the access lane to the rear of the proposed site. This is related to the case in many ways. The access lane is more than 3.5 metres wide along most of its length. There are some parts where it's slightly less due to encroaching fences and such, but more than the gateway requirement of 3.1 metres. And in Romsey, there are streets that regularly come down to that width anyway. I would be interested in exploring the sorts of improvements we would need to make in order that the lane at some stage in the future was of adoptable standard. It has been considered in the past. I know certainly until a few years ago, dust lorries came along this route to collect the bins. Over the past nearly 30 years that I have lived there, a dark, crime-infested area has been transformed. Garages have been converted or rebuilt for accommodation, workshops, and variously more occupied spaces. Due to more people being there, the area has become much safer and more integrated. The direction of change is clear. We are heading for a more Mews-like urban environment, and this, I think, is to be applauded. In Cambridge, we clearly need more high-quality, sustainable, walking distance accommodation in our city. The proposal doesn't increase the living space density to anywhere near as high as recent developments in the city, but being within walking distance is important. Because clearly, for instance, 3 cars take up a lot more public space than 3 people walking or cycling do. Higher density and lower crowding. Higher density also supports more passenger transport, local businesses and communities, and active transport has a whole suite of other benefits. This is not a lot about loss of garden space. Many different buildings already there are ramshackle, asbestos shacks. The current character of a lot of the accommodation across the city is unsustainable. Most roofs heat up in the sun, and that's about it. They do nothing for biodiversity or living space or energy capture. We need change. Rainwater capture, roof gardens, solar panels, and proper accommodation in locations where anyone would want to live. The proposal is better than most of the current new builds. There is a market for such quiet and lovely sites to live in. I would live there. Why deny someone the opportunity for such accommodation, and by doing so maintain the pressure on the city's current housing stock? This is not a serviced box apartment or a tiny student accommodation of the type which is popping up all over the city. This is decent, well-made accommodation. Local authorities here are under pressure to provide housing, and this proposal will increase the housing stock in the city at no cost to the local authorities. We need to encourage exactly this kind of development, and so I want to thank Richard for his proposal. I see many benefits and no downside. I would ask the committee to look favourably on this proposal and with a progressive eye. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I presume you are speaking as a ward councillor today? I presume you are speaking as a ward councillor?
Yes, I wanted to make it clear that I'm also a neighbour, so there is a mix.
You said, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So there's a statement now from Councillor Healy to be read out.
I would like to speak out in support of Mr Sykepofham's application and urge the committee to reject the case officer's recommendation to refuse the application. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend due to work commitments. The initial application was withdrawn by the applicant in February, who then completely reworked the proposal to address all concerns of the case officer, which the current application does. I've been to see the property and reviewed the plans and believe that the applicant has addressed all concerns raised. The revisions in the current application address the case officer's concerns. They include a wider access path of 1.2 metres rather than 1 metre previously proposed, no access from the track to the rear, a stepped planted lower area to improve the outlook for future occupants, and an additional roof light to the lower ground level to provide extra daylight in the kitchen and dining area. However, the case officer has now advised the application should be refused based on 2 new reasons for refusal which were not previously cited as a concern by the case officer in the previous application. Firstly, on the development not being compatible with the surrounding area, where there are a number of outside buildings, the proposed dwelling would be adjacent to 62 and 66 rear garages on the rear. Given this surrounding context, alongside the relatively small scale of the proposed dwellings, the proposal would not result in harm to residential properties in terms of overshadowing, overbearing or overlooking. While the proposal would create a new dwelling, the noise impact arising from any increased movement would not be significant. For these reasons, the proposal adequately respects the residential amenity of its neighbours and the constraints of the site, and I believe it's compliant with Cambridge Local Plan Policy 57. And actually, this is not consistent with many of other rear gardens along Cromwell Road and Brampton Road, which have annexes which are used in the same manner as separate dwellings, plus the proposed dwellings above ground mass would be smaller than many of the other rear garden buildings in the area, making it less obtrusive. Secondly, the applicant has assured me that of the 2 amenity areas proposed, the lower ground area is likely to get more use where the living and kitchen areas of the dwelling are located. So sound from this area will travel up rather than outwards, and activity will not be visible from surrounding properties and will be virtually undetectable from the surrounding area. The nature of the rear gardens on Cromwell Road are not therefore likely to experience any change at all, contrary to what is suggested. There is nothing in policies 52 or 55 of the local plan to which the proposals are contrary. Secondly, the case officer has suggested that the proposed dwellings' long, narrow access from Cromwell Road would not create a safe or inclusive access to the proposed dwelling, posing a safety risk for future occupiers. However, I would argue that no evidence has been provided for these concerns. Having seen the proposed development myself, I believe these concerns are unfounded. The length of the access, the main door at lower ground level to the highway, is 42 metres, which is in keeping with several approved similar schemes in the city, which are a similar distance from the highway. The access also meets the accessibility requirements set out in the building regulations part M42 and is therefore clearly accessible. The access has been widened to 1.2 metres for most of its length, even though this is not necessary for compliance with building regulations part M42. The access also meets the requirements of Secured by Design Homes 2019 version 2, March 2019. There's nothing in policies 55, 56 or 57 of the local plan or paragraph 130 of the NPPF to which the proposals are contrary. I believe for these reasons there are no meaningful concerns in relation to this proposed development which would merit refusal of the application. Actually, there are considerable benefits in addressing the current housing crisis in Cambridge, particularly in light of recent 2021 census findings, which showed a substantial increase in our population, one of the fastest growing nationally. This development provides much high quality residential accommodation, which is within the city and very accessible to all amenities. It is also a high quality design and highly sustainable. Development is energy and water efficient, generates no carbon emissions at source, and meets a significant proportion of its own energy requirements through solar photovoltaics. It also makes effective and efficient use of a site which is already partially developed but underutilised to help achieve one of the strategic objectives of the local plan in meeting the housing needs of the city. For these reasons, I would urge committee members to approve the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. You've read a lot of statements out today, haven't you? God. Okay, so it's a bit of an unusual scheme, isn't it? Because it's up for refusal, but it's here because it's supported, and 3 local councillors have spoken against the officer recommendation. And you'll know also there are some representations in the report, a couple in objection and 1 in support. So, councillors, any debate, questions? Councillor Dryden.
A couple of questions, Chair, please. Is this being used as a garage at the moment? And this is this is not an annex to what from the other buildings there. Annex. This is a separate building, isn't it? Separate dwelling, not an annex to the property it's in. Is that correct?
I'm hesitant to answer any question ever in case I get it wrong, but I think you're probably right, because if it was an annex, it wouldn't need planning permission, would it? They could just do it anyway. But I'll leave that to the officer to answer. Yes, Councillor Dorset-Wood.
I'd like to ask the officer, I mean, distance, now I'm worried about fire and emergency access on Cromwell Road through to the proposed dwelling. So emergency vehicles, deliveries, site access in construction. I'm very confused about, you know, how people are expected to get upstairs and downstairs in this house if they're in a wheelchair, and where exactly the access is it, you know, lower and upper level? So those are the first things I'd like to ask about. And the other thing is my understanding is that, I mean, the rear is an unadopted road. I understand that the access is through to Cromwell Road, not through this back lane. But my understanding is that our local policies don't support the use of back lanes, and it does sound as though Councillor Shaler is suggesting that this back lane should be opened up for development, with this being the first one. And as I said, you know, it is unadopted, has no lighting, services, etc., I would imagine. So the officer could answer my queries, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I'll leave it to the officer just to say that Councillor Shaler did make some wide-ranging comments, and I think not all of them were related to this item in particular, and he is also a neighbour. Councillor Thornborough.
I wonder where the bike store, it's somewhere too, I think there's accommodation for bikes at the front, but I can't see where it is for 2. And also, sometimes when we get schemes where it's been subdivided, one of the questions I keep asking is the existing property, which is losing space, losing garden and amenity, what is the impact on the existing building regarding parking or access to bicycles or bins? How does it affect the existing building for those amenity provisions?
Thank you. Yep.
Just going round, Alice, I'll come back to you in a minute with questions. So, Councillor Pora.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. On my diagram, it seems to suggest that there's a pinch point on the axis where it's 1 metre. If you look on page, I don't know what page it is, but anyway, on the proposed site plan, there's a 1 metre pinch point, which is within the red line. There is a blue line next to it. So that to me concerns me because 1 metre is very tight. But I noticed someone else, I think one of the ward councillors, says it was always 1.2 metres. So be grateful for clarification. Like Councillor Thornborough, I'm a bit concerned about the bin and cycle stores because I'm not sure whether the other 3 flats have also got bins and cycle stores at the front. So I'd be grateful if the officer could perhaps comment on that, because to me that is a material consideration, because I don't know, maybe they're already inside the flats, but it would be good to know. I noticed that, I think one of the ward councillors said that there was no access via the rear, but the officer is suggesting that there is a door at the back, which is where the wheelchair accessible part would be. So could the officer clarify if there is access to the rear or not? Because I think it's the applicant said there wasn't. And also the applicant said that the garden was already subdivided. So again, coming back to Councillor Thornborough's point, was that agreed with the flats, and are we then taking amenity space away from one of those other flats? It would also be quite useful to have a view on the Google map, just so we could see it in real life as well, at the front as well, just to get a kind of view of the ones that have been converted to flats. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thornborough.
Sorry, I forgot another point. So the red line site runs down the side of the existing building. So basically, I would like to know if there are any side windows or doors that the access to the house would be down the side. So there's a more comings and goings adjacent to this existing building, and it's not showing any access into that building. So does that mean that they have no side access into the existing building, no access into the rear garden except through the house? That's all lost because the red line boundary is a new property. That's sort of a clarification.
Thank you. Yep. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to comment on the disability aspects. I feel there is suggestion in the applicant's statement that the world is divided into able and disabled people. That's really not the case. I went to Peterborough one weekend on my own feet and returned in a wheelchair. Anybody can have a skiing accident. Anybody can have a sudden onset disability. If the only level access is to the bedroom, how would you entertain a disabled friend in the communal living area? What happens if there's a fire on the lower ground floor? Are you going to be able to get out those steps? I just think this is an ableist and naive proposal, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, and thanks for your thoughts all the time about disability, although I'm not quite clear whether you're talking in terms of policy compliance there, or whether you're talking in terms of your personal opinion on disability, because stairs are allowed in houses. It's perfectly acceptable under National Planning Policy Framework and our local policy to have stairs. But I'll leave it to the officer. So I'll go back to Alice now, if that's all right, and then we'll come back for a few more questions after that. Is that okay, councillors? Yeah, Alice.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just get my presentation up because I think it will be helpful to illustrate some points of clarification and come back to councillors on certain points. So bear with me. So in terms of the existing site is here. Here's a Google imagery for it. There's an existing garage which fronts the rear access behind Cromwell Road. The existing site, which technically falls outside the red line, but in the blue line, is 64 Cromwell Road here, the building. This has 2 flats, and each of the flats have access to external amenity area, a private external amenity area. One has direct access, which is via the doors here. This is currently open. It's not necessarily fenced off, as per my site visit a couple of months ago. And then access for the first floor flats to their amenity space, which is in the red line here. I hope you see my pointer, is via this access down here. So access to both the first floor amenity area, which is here, and the proposed dwelling here is via this access. So this access will be shared between the occupants of the first floor flat at number 64 and the proposed occupants of the dwelling here. I've just measured again the pinch point here, which I believe Councillor Pora mentioned, and it is 1 metre in width. In terms of the bike store is proposed to be adjacent to Cromwell Road. In this location here, it's a dotted red line, and so are the bins. The current bins and bike storage for the proposed, well, the existing flats even, at 64 are in this front gravel area. So the proposed provision will not impact upon the existing provision in terms of bins and bikes. In terms of access to the rear for the proposed dwelling, there's no door. This was removed. So the previously withdrawn application had a door to the rear, fronting the rear access, and this has subsequently been removed. So access to the property would not be from the rear access, it would only be from this narrow shared access. So I hope that clarifies the situation. In terms of side windows of the existing building, 64 Cromwell Road, there is a side window here at ground floor, which I don't believe would be adversely impacted by the proposal, as fencing doesn't need to be put along this elevation here. In terms of, and obviously that's an existing situation. In terms of access for the proposed amenity spaces, as I previously mentioned, the ground floor unit has direct access via the rear doors, and then the first floor via this shared access. And I think that was everything aside from the emergency access. So as I mentioned, there's no door to the rear facing the rear access. So emergency access to the property would be via this narrow access from the front. So I hope that clarifies everything. If I've missed something, then please do let me know.
I think there was a question of bikes. Where's the bike store? Is it Alice?
Yeah, sorry, I did mention that.
I'm sorry.
That's just here. Don't worry, it's been a long day, hasn't it? So
it has been a long day, yeah.
This is at the front here, this dotted line. No details have been submitted in terms of elevation plans of the store proposed, but it is on the site location plan, and it would be, further details I imagine would be supplied later on if members were minded to support the proposal, which obviously officers are recommending refusal.
Thanks, Alice. Councillor Dryden.
I did ask, was this building there now a garage? Was it still being used as a garage? And also, I just got while I'm talking, I do find it quite strange that it's acceptable to put a fence up right against someone's window that close. I mean,
Okay, well, let's let the officer answer that. And thanks for that. And we'll follow that up in a minute with you, Alice, but let's get Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood's question as well.
I'm still a bit confused about where the doors are to the upstairs flat, how they get out, and to the rear ground floor flat. And again, are you saying that there will be a fence abutting the existing house, right against the house? And I just want to confirm as well that entry to the proposed new dwelling is through the bedroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thornborough.
I think what I asked about it was explained that one of the existing flats has a garden above the soakaway. Is that where the bins and bike store is going to be for that, the accommodation, that's the existing accommodation at the front? And the other thing I just wanted to point out that our requirement for M42 is it's accessible and adaptable dwellings, so we do allow staircases are, fine, but it needs to be designed so that either a chairlift can go in or a platform lift, because they do need to take into account the changing needs of occupants.
Thank you, Councillor Pora.
Thank you. Yes, so if I've understood correctly, the only access is from the front down the narrow pathway, which has a pinch point of 1 metre. So actually, wheelchair-wise, I thought it had to be 1.2, which worries me. And then the wheelchair would come along the top walkway, but only be able to get into the bedroom, I think. So I hope that's correct. And also, Councillor Thornborough asked about the windows adjacent to the path on the existing flat. My understanding is there must be a window along the pathway, because the other side is a brick house from what I can see on the plan. So if the officer could just pick up Councillor Thornborough's point and confirm whether there is a habitable room window giving out onto that pathway, that would be useful, particularly as it's very narrow there.
Thank you, Councillor. Just one question from me as well, Alice. As you talked, I think, in your presentation about it didn't look like a garage or anything like that, and there's lots of garages down there. Is that, I mean, I understand your reasons for refusal, but is that necessity? I mean, it looks a bit like a sort of garden pavilion to me, which seems eminently suitable to be in a garden. I don't know whether that would cut it with you or not, but maybe you could comment on that as well. So back to you, Alice.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just share the presentation again. So bear with me. So in terms of the use of the existing garage, I believe it's just used as a garage for storage or other means. And to clarify access, so level access is provided from Cromwell Road along this narrow pathway onto the site here, which continues to the upper garden area and then through to the bedroom at ground floor. And then there is a shower room here. Obviously, if obviously internally there are stairs which you go down to the lower ground floor internally, as well as stairs externally to get to the lower garden area. And you can again go through the doors to the living area. So I hope that clarifies the access to the proposed dwelling. As I said, there's no access via the rear access to the rear of Cromwell Road properties. Yes, the soakaway for the proposed dwelling would be on land which is used for the amenity space of the first floor flats at number 64, and that is here. The drainage officer has no objection to the application, just to note. In terms of the impact on the ground floor window, which I mentioned, I don't believe there would be a fence proposed along this elevation. There's an existing fence along here, if you can see my laser pointer, and this would not be increasing in height. This ground floor room does, this window does serve a bedroom, which that is the only outlook of that bedroom. But as I said, this is an existing situation in terms of the outlook at the moment is onto a fence along this boundary here. In terms of bins and bikes for the flats at number 64, as I said previously, these are all housed in the front garden area, and they're not proposed in this rear amenity area. And then I think finally, in terms of appearance, let me get back to the elevations. The proposed dwelling is, as I said in the officer report, is relatively modest in scale and subservient to the existing dwelling to the front of the site, fronting Cromwell Road. It's not particularly intrusive. So in terms of the visual impact, I consider that the visual impact resulting from the subdivision and the domestication of the plot in terms of the separation of uses would be the harmful impact, alongside obviously the use proposed in this backland location. So I hope that clarifies matters, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Thank you very much. So, councillors, did you have everything answered there? Was there anything else? Yeah, Councillor Thornborough.
I am now that the case officer has explained that there's a bedroom window opening onto this 1 metre wide alleyway with the comings and goings to the adjacent property. I'm very concerned about the disturbance to that room if the window's open at night. That's a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's an existing situation, though, isn't it?
Well, there's no private dwelling there's no comings and going to a private dwelling past the bedroom window.
Check with Alice, shall we? Okay. Councillor Gauntlet-Wood.
Yeah, what's the light like into the bedroom in the proposed new dwelling? Which is at the, sorry, not the bedroom, the living area, the lower area.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bora?
Just to check with the officer, I asked if the 1 metre thing wasn't compliant, because my understanding is it needs to be 1.2 metre clearance for, well, access of wheelchairs and or other things. So I don't know if the officers could confirm that, because if it is only 1 metre and it's the only access, then that concerns me.
Thank you. Okay, Alice, 3 more questions, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the impact to noise and disturbance to the ground floor bedroom window of the first flat within 64 Cromwell Road, it is an existing situation that the occupiers of the first floor flat would utilise the side access to gain access to their rear amenity area. So officers considered that the addition of movements along this access resulting from the development of the rear dwellings would not be significant enough to warrant refusal given the impact on that bedroom window. So I hope that makes sense. In terms of the 1 metre pinch point that Councillor Pora mentioned, for bikes it is 1.2 metres in width for a pedestrian and a cycle to walk through, hence why the bike store was provided adjacent to Cromwell Road, not within the dwellings curtilage, if you will, in that backland location. In terms of whether a metre is sufficient for access for disabled and wheelchair users, I don't know what the I'm not 100% sure on the width that we have at the for the standard, but I believe door frames are approximately a metre, or if not a bit larger than that. As I said, I'm not 100% sure on council policy in that respect. Maybe Toby can clarify that. In terms of light levels, as mentioned in the officer report, this was a concern of the previously withdrawn application. However, a daylight sunlight assessment was submitted, which alleviated officer concerns with regards to light reaching the lower ground floor open plan living, dining and kitchen area due to the addition of a roof light to the rear, which would be over the kitchen, alongside the increased distance. Let me just show you the plan that I'm referring to. The increased distance between the fencing and the windows. So the distance between this ground floor fencing and this opening here to the lower ground floor, and the fact that it is now stepped, officers felt that this was sufficient to overcome concerns regarding outlook, especially now it's planted and stepped away, but also in terms of light levels coming through these bifold doors. So I hope that clarifies matters.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Alice. So Toby, 1 metre.
Not aware of a specific standard, Chair.
Under the building regs M42, where if you have a shared external access route, and I think this is shared because of the rear amenities, it needs to be 1.2 metres clear width with occasional localised obstructions reducing to 1 metre, 1050 millimetres.
Toby said he's not aware of, he's head of planning. You're saying there is a...
It comes under part M42.
Okay. Also, it's an existing shared access way with permission, so does that make a difference, Toby?
Well, Chair, I mean, I think without wanting to get stuck on a specific dimension, I think officers' view is that the access is long and narrow, and that forms the second part of the reasons for refusal that we're putting forward. If there's any further evidence, if members are willing to accept officers' recommendation, then we could look at the building regs to supplement the officer position.
Maybe we've talked this one around the houses a bit, really, haven't we? Are there any more really concerning matters that councillors want to raise? Doesn't look like it. No. Okay, let's go to the recommendation then. Toby.
Chair, the recommendation is set out on page 281 of the officer report, and that is to refuse for the 2 reasons as set out.
All those in favour of the officer recommendation of refusal?
That's unanimous, Chair.
So the item is refused, planning permission. Thank you very much. So, councillors, we've got, it's 5:45. We've got 2 more planning items and 1 more enforcement report. We haven't been at this stage for a while, but what should happen and will happen today is that we have a vote on whether we want to carry on past 6 o'clock right now, because you may not want to. I don't particularly want to. I'm just going to check with Toby if any of those 2 planning items are essential to do today. Is that the case or not? Do you know? Items 11 and 12.
I'm not aware that either of these are essential items to do today, no.
Okay, and I just also, the other pertinent thing is John Shuttlewood hanging around waiting to present the enforcement report? Do we know?
He is online.
So I might suggest to members that we take John Shuttlewood's report and don't do the 2 planning items, but I'm Councillor Thornborough.
Can we just see whether there's any, we want to discuss the reasons for refusal and whether we want to add to the reasons for refusal? That discussion should have been before we taken the vote.
Sorry, we've done it. Hello. Okay. So, yeah, I'm sort of getting ahead of myself saying about taking the John Shuttlewood thing, but if councillors want to carry on, do you want to carry on 2 more items, or are you not? Okay, let's have a vote then. So, all those in favour of carrying on after 6 o'clock, and you're not necessarily committing yourself to 2 items, but carry on is what I mean. Do you want to carry on?
Chair,
Yes,
you did
Councillor.
suggest going for the enforcement first before the last for the 2.
Officers need to get away as well, childcare and all that sort of thing, but
This was John.
yeah,
He said yes,
okay. Yeah, okay. Well, let's do John's. So I'm sure we'll crack that out in less than 15 minutes, and then we'll have a vote just before 6, if that's all right, on whether to carry on. We will effectively still be doing the right thing there, if that's okay with everyone. Not everyone happy? We can have the vote now if you want to. No? Okay, right. John Shuttlewood, do you want to do that report then, please, now? Hello, John.
Chair. Hello there, Chair. How?
Bit quiet.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Is that any better?
No, it's not.
No? My mic is on, so bear with me a second. Is that any better now?
Just speak really loudly, I think, John, if you can.
Is that any better now, Chair?
That's good, Tap.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's okay. We can manage.
Is that okay? Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'll take the headphones out and do it like that. Right. Excuse me just a moment. Been sitting here since 10 listening to your very much robust debates. Very, very impressed indeed with the range of topics being discussed today. So you will see my report as per the committee item. Right, so it's been some time since I've come to committee. So if you can hear me, the executive summary, we've opened some cases, we've closed some cases in June. Obviously less than before. This is probably due to, I suspect, the kind of team machinations that we've had recently with Will Holloway's sudden departure. So there's been changes to the processes of how we've been doing stuff, how we're working together within the team, and how we're allocating stuff. Our own geographical areas have changed as well. Next month, well, that's now actually yesterday, we have introduced new ways of alleged breaches of planning control being reported online. There is a brand new web page. If you go to Google search for Planning Enforcement, Cambridge City Council, you are directed to a brand new shiny page on the Greater Cambridgeshire Planning website that has a video on there, and it basically kind of takes you through a load of steps as to regards of what a planning breach entails and what other steps there might be, as well as reporting to matter to the planning enforcement. I invite you to have a look for yourself to make you aware of it as well. I'm quite happy to go through it with anyone at a later point. The enforcement register is also going to be made online, available any soon, so they will have real-time, up-to-date lists of all the public enforcement notices being served on that. Updates to significant cases, as reported in the report for this month. 30 Mays Causeway, this was where conservation officers and local councillors originally said that there was an unauthorised loft dormer on the rear of the roof at the property at 30 Mays Causeway. We served an enforcement notice, and this was appealed, and the enforcement required either reduce the loft dormer in size to what had been granted for, or remove the loft dormer in its entirety. The 6 months was given to carry this out. Now, this notice was served in May 2021, so over a year ago, and the notice was appealed within the 28 days in June 21, and I think it probably serves the amount of time that planning the inspectorate takes to carry out some appeals, by the fact that we only got the decision on the 21st and 27th of June of this year, basically dismissing the appeal and upholding the enforcement notice. So we put a robust case representing the local council's opinion as to why we served the enforcement notice, and thankfully the inspectorate agreed with us at that time. So the new notice compliance date is 2 days after Christmas Day coming up. I've already had a contact from an agent representing the owner saying what they need to do in order to comply with the notice. So hopefully we will get compliance for that notice by that time period. On to 18 Neath Farm Court. Members will remember, hopefully, that there was a recent planning application came in for a retrospective build of a rear single-storey extension. This application came about after an enforcement investigation went out and discovered the existence of the rear extension. We gave them the option to stick in their retrospective application or to remove it on the basis that there were similar like-for-like extensions in the area which had been granted planning permission. Retrospective application was called in for committee determination, and the recommendation to approve was overturned by members and refused on the grounds of visual dominance and the fact that the extension could not support a brown and green roof. Now, formal action was then put on hold because an appeal was received shortly afterwards. The inspector went out and considered that rear extension, just as the officer and yourselves had done so beforehand, and indeed us. And the upshot was that the inspector found that they were happy with the size of the extension, and it wouldn't cause an overbearing form of development. However, the inspector did address members' concerns regarding flat roof surface water management, and so has actually granted planning permission subject to a condition that the flat roof be seeded. So we will get a green roof in there. So unfortunately, the rear extension will be staying, but it will have a green roof in the future. Quick update about 8 Kelsey Crescent in Cherry Hinton. We served an enforcement notice, and and after a planning refusal, an appeal has come in against that, and also putting in a claim for costs. We still await the decisions from our planning inspectorate to come back to us, so that is still on hold. The appendixes, you would have seen the numbers of cases received and closed. We served one enforcement notice for a breach of condition notice in Hills Road for essentially parking on the pavement, which was a breach of the condition of the planning permission in a very vital spot that, you know, it was essential that notice was complied with. And so that notice has been served. And that is it. I know the time is short and you've been here by 10 o'clock. I know there's going to be a load of questions. I'm willing to take a few. My computer shuts down at half an hour, I'm being told, according to my computer restart, that I can't get rid of. And I was here for an hour last time I attended to committee, but I'm willing, Chair, to take any questions that members may have. I understand that members will have questions wanting updates on specific areas of enforcement, particularly around issues in Cherry Hinton and also with regard to Newmarket Road and Easy Hotel. I would say, but I'm not going to ask them personally in any great detail in a public place such as this, but I will address and talk to members directly regarding those matters. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for making that clear. Questions, Councillor Dryden.
Chair, and thank you, John. You did say we'll ask you to see me later, and you probably know the one. It's
yes.
It's the High Street. That they lost their appeal, so they've gone through the appeal now, and it's been well over 3 years now. And every time I ask what's happened to it, it's going through the legal department.
Yeah, I can. Councillor Dryden, thank you very much for your question. I, in all honesty, hold my hands up and say that I've not progressed this as well I want to, and it is an outstanding matter. It is on my priority list to be doing at the top. I don't know if you're aware, I am currently working 2 days on enforcement, and I have been since February, and once Will disappeared at the end of May, it's been nigh impossible to be able to basically do and get a grip of anything that I want to do. And I do want to deal with Cherry Hinton as well as Easy Hotel, and it's something that, after hopefully speaking to Toby Williams at a meeting we've got and a catch up next week, we can put measures into place that next month when I come to committee, I will be able to give you a better update.
Thanks, John. Yes, come back.
Yeah, well, but the only reason and the other councillors of Cherry Hinton, we've been told if this goes on much longer, you won't be able to put appeal in, because no, they won't have to go if they lost the appeal, because you'd be out of time, because we was told it's 4 years, and then we must be getting close to that now.
Okay, so this is regarding the post office and 5 Million Road, just to confirm.
Yeah, that's right, John. The coast office.
Yeah, so apologies, I can't see the screen for you today because there's a double audio feed taking place when I do. So it is. We've actually served the notice. So Councillor Dryden, I can reassure you that there is no time limit because we have already served the notice. So the clock stops once we serve the notice.
Thanks for that,
so I understand your concerns.
Yeah, Toby, you want to say something?
Yes, I think my understanding, John, this is a matter that has been passed. I thought the matter had been passed to prosecution. The prosecution files it's a case of the council solicitor, I think, putting prosecution to the court.
Right, thanks for that. Councillor Thornborough.
Oh, thank you, John. One thing I would be very interested in at another presentation at committee would be what is happening with Airbnb short-term let breaches. I know that you've been very successful, but not now, but it would be good to know the numbers and how it's progressing and how ward councillors might be able to assist with gathering information, but another time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Did you want to say anything back, John?
That's noted. Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Thornborough, we currently have 60 open cases. for Airbnbs alone. They represent about a third of our outstanding cases. Currently, they're allocated for a special project, but I would love to do myself. But at the moment, I have to be entirely honest. We need additional resources to deal with them efficiently and as quick as soon as possible. Even if we just had a temporary admin resource just for a month or two, just to do a massive work of paperwork that's required for those prosecutions to move forwards, or for those, whether we serve notices or not on those cases.
Right, thanks, John. Thanks. Just one final question then, Councillor Porter.
Yeah, I was echo Councillor Thorne about Airbnb. I don't know whether we could even have a separate briefing on it, like sometimes we have on general topics, because it would be really useful. And also I just wanted to thank John for the work on the Maids Causeway one. That's been going for a while. That I was one of the ward councillors involved. It is a building of local interest right on the common, so it's reassuring to hear that the inspector has agreed with us. And I just reiterate, probably more to Toby now, that I don't think we're getting the appeal letters. We used to get the appeal rejects or, overrulings or not come through, and we just haven't had them for ages. So I say this at every meeting, but if we could be sent them, it's really useful to know, just so, because obviously that one with the roof, the green roof, was one we overturned off as a recommendation, but the inspector's gone the other way, and it's just really useful to read the reasons. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Did you want to say anything back, John? Yep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Thank you very much for your comments. Take them on board. What I will do personally, I will send the ward councillors and yourself for you to pass on. I'm happy to send to all planning committee members copies of the Neath Court appeal decision, as well as the 30 Maids Causeway appeal decision from the inspectorate.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, John. Really appreciate your work. You're under-resourced. We all appreciate it. Maybe we'll get you more resources going forward. Not quite sure how at the moment, but I'm looking at the executive councillor at the moment, so maybe she can find some more people to work with you. We need to pay them more money, don't we? That's what we need to do, I think. But I don't know, government don't seem very keen on that, do they, unfortunately? So, that'll do for now. Thanks, John. You're free to go. So we're going to have that vote now then. Personally, I think 8 hours is enough for one day, but... So I'm going to ask you all those in favour of continuing on with the next... Yes, Councillor.
Can I just check, what I don't want to do is end up coming to the next meeting and us being there till midnight. Do we know if the next agenda for September is as massive as this one? Just because in terms of...
Next agenda won't be set yet, so we don't...
But I mean, roughly, because my only concern is if we keep deferring, we just end up with longer and longer items. But like you say, it has been a very long day in the heat. I'm not...
I think it's unlikely, through you, Chair, I think it's unlikely to be as long as today.
So, all those in favour of continuing on with the next two items after 6 o'clock? Against? Right, we're not going on. That's it then. So we're finished. Thanks very much, everyone. Yes, Councillor.
Could I ask that perhaps the two things that were deferred from this meeting will go on at the beginning of the next agenda?
I don't know about that, because they're minor items and we might have major items on that agenda. And
there's no reason why we shouldn't do that. And there's the deferred one as well.
Your request is noted, Councillor.
Thank you, that's a good
very
answer.
much.